The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome to Marketing with Purpose. This is a segment of the Bliss Business Podcast where we explore what it really takes for marketing leaders to create impact that goes beyond the numbers. I'm Tullio, and each episode we sit down with marketing experts to explore their leadership approach and strategies that drive performance and resonate with their audience. Together, we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and how purpose and empathy can transform the way brands connect with people. So let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Alexandra Russo. She's a fractional CMO and marketing consultant and founder of Alex the CMO. Alex brings more than 13 years of experience helping brands scale with a strong focus on franchising, multi-location retail, and B2B organizations. Over the past few years, she has partnered with 16 brands as a fractional executive, helping leadership teams move faster with strategic executive-level marketing support. She also led the growth of the marketing function at Deka Lash, scaling it across more than 100 locations, and specializes in building social media systems that go beyond content into real, measurable growth. We're going to explore today customer connection in a data-driven world and how thoughtful strategy and systems can help brands create more meaningful, scalable connections with their audience. So let's dive in. I'm excited to do this. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
So, Alex, before we go and dive in a little bit today, I'd love to hear, why was customer connection in a data world like a topic that you chose to explore with us today? What makes that so important right now, in your opinion?
I think people are craving it. I think I'm craving it. With all of the conversations right now about AI and all of the ways that it's being implemented, which so much of it is really exciting, but it's the people to people, and it's making sure that we're talking to people like they're people, and that I think is going to make such a difference, and I think is so important. And the conversations that I have about it with friends who are not in marketing, or just kind of random conversations, it pops up about this analog kind of existence, going back to analog, where people don't want to be attached to their phones. They don't want to just be, fed all of this digital stuff all the time. They want meaningful connections, events. They want community. And so I think it's a crave that we have the ability to kind of answer that call, answer that question, and be the ones to provide it.
It's interesting. About 6 months ago, I had a conversation with the head of a VC, and I asked her, so what's next? We got AI, we got all this digital. What's next? What do you think is next? And I was surprised by her answer. It was like, in about 5 years, maybe less than that, people are going to just crave connection. They're going to look, it's going to be almost like a renaissance. They're going to be interested in art, in music, in just learning how to actually socialize. There'll be need for coaches, training on how to be social. I was like, this is where we're heading.
This is where we're heading.
But you're right. It's like with all this technology, we're almost forgetting the art of connection. So let's dive in a little bit because, CMOs are often pulled between near-term campaign results and long-term brand building. So there's always the question of how do you build that connection and resonance, but I need the performance right now, right? So How do you ensure with your clients that the marketing strategy that you employ stays aligned with the company's growth goals? And where do you find the biggest friction points in making that happen?
I think it's all about extreme planning and over communication. So I think as clear as you can be with your clients as possible about what their goals are, and making sure that those really are their goals. Because, well, not just that there are their goals, but getting really kind of granular. Everybody's goal is to make money. So we've got to figure out okay, but what's the barrier? What's making us not make money right now in a way that you think we need to be making money? So for example, my old company, we wanted to make more money. Duh. But what was a barrier was there was extreme turnover in all of the locations. So it turns out we didn't really have a making money problem. We had an employment problem. We had a turnover problem. So we needed to focus all of our attention and how do we get people to stay and feel like this is a place where they want to, hone in their craft and work there for a long time, because the turnover was just killing us. So it wasn't really about getting clients in the door. It was about making sure there's people there to service them. So I think getting really clear as to what barriers are there and therefore what goals we need to make. And then in terms of making sure we stay aligned, again, over communicating. I'm a former project manager. And therefore, I think the problems that exist are new shiny things. And they're always a problem, but somebody will see something where I think the new thing is, well, Claude told me that we should be doing this. My ChatGPT told me that we should be doing that. And it's like, okay, well, we've already got this big project plan. So what's going to fall in order to make room for this? And then not just, taking a new idea and running with it as soon as we have it without really thinking about the implications or overall work plan.
That's the entrepreneur dilemma, right? I call it chasing shiny-itis. It's like,
yes.
stay focused. You said something really interesting, which is something we talk about a lot on this show, which is really about alignment. Like so much focus is putting on the messaging and how you're going to be perceived on the optics, right? But if you don't have alignment on the back end of that, the customers will feel that. The alignment, it's going to have greater impact than any content you put out that's not genuine any day.
Absolutely.
So I love that. Okay. Now let's talk about leading under pressure, right? So high stakes situation like a brand crisis or market downturn, how do you maintain a sense of purpose and empathy while making quick strategic decisions?
It's a great question. And it can always be difficult, I think, to keep your cool. I find that panic doesn't help anything. So if I panic in private. And I think when other people feel panic and when they start to panic, it creates paralysis. I don't mean to be only saying words that start in P, but like they can begin to feel paralyzed and therefore nothing's going to get done. And therefore, like it leads to them only talking about how stressed they are. I'm now talking about teams who are reporting back up to me. And that doesn't help anybody. So in terms of being that translator, and I think the answer is being a panic translator. So you're getting the pressure, you feel the pressure. Don't, what I gripe up, I don't gripe down. So if I have stressors, I make sure that I don't put that on my team. It's not their responsibility to deal with my stress. Instead, I try to get them excited about a pivot that we're going to make and the outcomes that it's going to create. And obviously, if you're going overboard, they can kind of feel that it's probably overboard, but put it in a way that makes it exciting for their growth. Maybe they're going to get something out of it in terms of, another bullet on their resume or a way that they're going to really help the company. But no matter what, if I'm getting a lot of pressure, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they're not feeling it in a way that they're like in a crunch.
I love that. Sometimes you can't avoid the storm, but you could contribute to the storm, or you can be the calm in the storm. The storm's still there.
Storm's there.
The calm in the storm is the one people levitate to, because it's like, help us deal with this in a way that's human and pragmatic. Love that.
Totally.
Okay. Let's talk about you as a fractional CEO. You have multiple clients, and sometimes they come to you and they're looking to launch new products or enter new markets. What has been your most effective way to align sales, product, or service and customer success teams? And where does that alignment tend to break down?
It tends to break down. I'll start with that one first. With, I think, a lack of communication over what's to be expected with a fractional joining the team. So I think sometimes there's confusion over how much I'm embedded or if I'm an advisor. So I think the best case scenario is when everybody's on the same page about what to expect from this new team member, because the way I work is when I'm doing a fractional capacity, it's being embedded. And I think, with all things, it's making sure that we know as soon as I'm on board, there are going to be some changes. They're going to hopefully be all good changes, but it's the idea of working together. And I think some problems start to happen when people feel defensive. I think it's like any new person joining a team. It's like, well, who's this? what I was doing was just fine. And it's not about who's doing a good or bad job. It's about what needs to happen to hit the goal.
Yeah. Tip for CEOs who hire fractional executives: never tell your team, this is just a consultant we're trying out.
Yes.
That will create sidebar conversation. It will marginalize the very person you've hired to help you fix what's broken.
Absolutely.
Give them the authority as if they were a full-time hire. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Okay. Now, I'd love to hear some of the ways you've used customer insights to help drive strategy. Can you share a time when maybe customer feedback or behavior data completely shifted your campaign direction? And what has that taught you about balancing intuition with analytics? And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people very data-driven. Sometimes the data doesn't tell the contextual part of the story. That only happens when you're listening to people and actually saying the data and what people are saying don't always connect. So how do you balance that? What's worked for you?
If you don't listen to your customers, you're in for a rude awakening. Say you did really well on a campaign, but then you hear feedback that some people felt. So for example, I've run summer campaigns where we're giving the world to new clients who walk in the door, and we've had gift baskets and all of these like experiential things. Well, it wasn't available for our current members, but we didn't really think about that because we wanted new people in the door. And overwhelmingly, like throughout this summer, we had existing members who we care about deeply say, I wanted to purchase this thing that was available, but I was told that I couldn't do it. I've been a member for a year. It's pretty strange that I couldn't do that. And we had some people who, some franchise owners who were really, really strict about the rules and saying, well, this isn't available for you, and therefore you can't have it, which totally rechanged our strategy for the next year. We don't want to marginalize anyone. Our numbers showed that campaign worked really well, but it's obvious that had we opened it up in a way that didn't marginalize anybody, of course we could do even better because we're going to have more people on board. So we opened it up. Had we just stuck with the numbers, we would have said, well, didn't really matter. We didn't see a massive amount of attrition because of it. Our members didn't leave because of it. But who knows? I mean, after 2 years, maybe they would have. Maybe they would have, been tired of feeling that they're pushed to the side. And instead, we did even better. And numbers would have never told that story. That was all feedback.
Yeah, and it's so important too. Even if you've been an expert in the industry for decades, and you just have conviction and like, I've seen this a million times, this is how it's done. Don't make that assumption.
Right.
Speak to people because behavior changes and the why, the motivation changes too. So if you're not tapping into that, you're working with half the story. So
Always.
Love to hear what you're doing there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's talk about, really as marketers, it's all about driving revenue, right? So just curious, what's worked best for you in helping organization turn marketing into a revenue driver? And where do you typically see the gaps, like in CRM or lead tracking, or how sales aligns with tracking conversion, the handoff that happens after sales, and that makes it kind of hard to measure the success. So when I have all these components and you got one area saying it's their fault, that's missing, where do you see typically the biggest gap in getting that alignment?
Well, the biggest gap tends to be, in my experience, like a Frankensteining of platforms. And you have this thing that's going to measure that, and you've got a Zap that connects it to this thing, and the Zap broke. And you're like, well, how long was it broken? Like, I don't know. And so then you're getting an incomplete picture of data at all times because you've just signed on to all these different platforms that are promising different things that are giving you an incomplete picture. So I feel like it's software and, data overwhelm that aren't really telling you anything, but they look cool and you know that they're reporting something. And in terms of like biggest revenue driver, I'm all about re-engagement. So we can get new people in the door with like a really solid campaign, and that's great. But where people fall off is, one new appointment or one new purchase of whatever, that's great. If we can get them to come back a second, a third time, or purchase an add-on, I think that's where it gets really interesting. And looking beyond just new people. I think everybody tends to really focus on new people, but if you can figure out how well you're going to do, if that one new person comes back 5 times, every new person comes back 5 times or makes 5 purchases, that's where like the real money is.
Nice.
And so for me, that tends to be, CRM, re-engagement strategies, kind of really focusing on that, I don't even know what you would call it, bottom of the funnel to turn it back over again.
Having been in software most of my career, what I've seen this happen at scale when a major platform came out. I remember when SAP came out and everybody bought onto it, and like 70% of those implementations failed because everybody thought that you would just put the software in place and it would run your business. And that's not how it works. Then you had the big 4 at the time. At the time, it was actually the big 6 come in. And it's like, no, you have to actually customize this. Before you customize it, we should understand your workflow, your processes. We should do all that alignment first, the people, processes. And then we can make sure the software customizes to how you do business. So it was an enabler, not the outcome. Right. And I think what happens is you still have a lot of people who believe the software is going to fix all my problems.
Yes.
And they're like, and it's a default because then you can just blame it's the software.
It's the software. Yeah.
And I'm like, fix it first on paper. And then buy software that supports what you're going to do on paper.
Exactly.
So awesome. Okay.
Don't just layer in tech to say that you're layering tech and you put another one in place. It just becomes a mess.
Exactly. It happens all the time. But we're being data driven. We're being asked to be data driven. So I have to make these investments. Like, but why don't you figure out the data first, even if you can figure out manually and then automate? Even understanding everything first and then automate. Don't let the software dictate how you run your business.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, let's shift from software to people. In terms of helping high performance teams, what's your approach in helping to develop marketing talent? So in your case, as a fractional CMO, you might be brought in to bring in leadership where maybe it's lacking. They might have some marketing teams, but no true leadership strategy. And so how do you help in your clients, those teams that you inherit, to hit performance goals, but also stay engaged and inspired? And where do you see leaders struggling the most in retaining their top talent?
I think the struggles with retaining is because the current CEO or whomever, the current business is feeling the weight of their stress, or maybe things aren't working out well, and everybody's kind of losing sight of the bigger picture. They're feeling like cogs in the machine. They're feeling the issues. There's not enough money for bonuses this year, or whatever it is, and everything feels doom and gloom, or it feels really stagnant, or just everything's on fire. We can't hear about your problems right now. We don't have the time. Just get this done. We'll talk about it later. We'll get it done. So I think there's a lot of, and I understand, why that happens, how that happens, of course. You can't talk about mission, vision, values all the time. But you should talk about them a good amount. And I think in order to inspire, you've got to see the individuality in people. And I think for some leaders, that sounds tiring because there's just not enough, you're stressed, you have a lot on your plate, but making sure that you do meet with everybody, understanding what their professional goals are, where they want to go in their career, what do they do for fun, what do they do on the side, do they do a side hobby that you're like, oh wait, you design on the side, you have a design shop, that's amazing, how can we help you mold that here? So I think it's really investing in people so that they feel invested, understanding where they want to go. And if they want to go somewhere where, this company is not going to take them there, I think having the difficult conversation of maybe this isn't for you long term, because if it's not going to work out, it's best to just call that and get somebody in who's going to be that better fit versus really dragging it out in a way that's, going to make everybody unhappy.
Yeah. There is a tendency when things get difficult to try to tighten control, visibility, almost to the point of micromanaging, thinking that's going to improve things. And that just makes people even further disengaged. Like you're saying, connecting with people, bringing the humanity back in, doubling down on empathy and reminding why we're here and the purpose of why we're here. and the impact we're trying to make beyond the numbers. That's something that in the most difficult times, there have actually been studies around this, that produces the best results. But there is the human tendency when things get difficult, tighter control, more compliance, and the opposite happens from that. So
exactly.
Speaking of purpose, empathy, and impact, how does purpose or empathy shape the way you approach marketing? And maybe can you share a personal story where your work maybe had a meaningful impact on a customer or an employee?
Yeah. I think empathy, I think I'm a very empathetic person, and I'm very much a people person. I like being with people, talking with people, connection, community, all that stuff. And so for me, I love consumer marketing because it's a conversation that I'm having with somebody. And I think people overcomplicate it in terms of slogans and trying to get really catchy. And like, that's cool too. And if it works out, great. But all of these touch points are just conversations that you're having. And you're talking to people, as long as you're able to understand who your audience is, what they care about. And I love that type of research. I love figuring out like our different personas and what it is that's going to motivate them. And you talk to them like a normal person would in a way that's going to resonate with them. Obviously, they're going to come back. So to me, the messaging is like the most fun part because it's all about empathy, and it's all about, what does Tullio want, and therefore, and how can we deliver on that? And in terms of personal, I've been really lucky with teams. I've had some amazing people on my teams, and I've gotten feedback from them that's been really meaningful in terms of how they've felt supported and how we've kind of weathered the storm as a team. I mean, I've gone back to my old marketing team, for example, when I was working there. I'd be like, guys, we are the best team here. We're going to weather any storm. We are not worried about what's going on. And everybody would get like really on board with that. And just hearing kind of the feedback after the fact of how much that helped, it meant the world.
Alex, you know what resonated very loudly to me during this conversation? We're talking about customer connection, but it really starts with the connection you have with your team.
Yes.
You can get really good at building internal connection, then that will naturally extend outside. If you're not looking at that, it doesn't genuinely happen. So let that be a note for everyone. Customer connection starts with the connection you built inside the doors of the company first.
Couldn't have said.
Thank you for joining us on the Marketing with Purpose series. I really appreciate having you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas for how you can align strategy, execution, and purpose in your own work. If you found value in these discussions, like, subscribe, and share it to keep the conversation going. And remember, great marketing doesn't just sell, it serves. See you next time.